Om Sadashiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Om. Namaste, all of you. Welcome back to our continuing reading from Poojya Swamiji's great book, The Value of Values. A value is a value only if the value of the value is valued by you. A value is a value only if the value of the value is valued by you. A succinctly yet profoundly worded definition of a value. Which can flow out only out of such great personalities and teachers like our Poojya Swamiji, Poojya Swami Dayananda Saraswati. Our scriptures lay a lot of emphasis on cultivating virtues, which we are referring to here as values. Virtues definitely need to be nurtured, and vices need to be weeded out of the garden of the mind. All of us are gardeners in our own right, as Swami Paramarthananda said recently in his introduction to chapter 16 of Shrimad Bhagawad Geetha in his ongoing lectures. I just wanted to recall that over here. Swamiji said that we are all gardeners and we must look at our minds as a field in which grow fragrant flowers and weeds that obstruct the healthy growth of such flowers and other plants. We must carefully till the soil of the garden of our mind, weed out the parasites and the vices. In the form of Asuri Sampat, about which Lord Krishna talks about in chapter 16. We must weed out, we must first till the land, the soil, then weed out the parasites and the obstructing elements, and sow the seeds of fragrant flowers of Daivi Sampat that will bloom in the future. The cultivation of Daivi Sampat or fragrances are as emphasized by our scriptures as very critical to pave the path to moksha. As Krishna himself says in chapter 16, Daivi Sampat Vimokshaya Nibandhaya Asuri Mata. Daivi Sampats need to be cultivated to achieve the Parama Purushartha, namely moksha, without which no knowledge can be seeded in the garden of the mind. Even if it is seeded, the seed will not sprout. Even if it sprouts by some chance, it may not be available for our enjoyment. Maybe not. It is through the flower of Daivi Sampat that the fragrance of Jnanam flows out. So, this set of 20 values that are found in chapter 13 of Shrimad Bhagawad Geetha, which is titled Kshetra Kshetrajna Vibhaga Yogaha, have been given out by Lord Krishna as one of the topics that belong to the Charama Shatkam of Shrimad Bhagavad Gita, the concluding 6 chapters of Shrimad Bhagavad Gita. The 3 topics that are covered in the Charama Shatkam are Jnana Yoga, then the result of Jnana Yoga, which is Jivatma Paramatma Aikyam, and Jnana Yoga Sadhanani, or the aids to qualify ourselves for receiving Jnanam, to make ourselves eligible. The eligibility criteria, if I may say so, in the form of these 20 values, beginning from Amanitvam and ending with Tattvajnanartha Darshanam, 20 values, which came as an answer to one of Arjuna's 6 questions that he posed to Lord Krishna at the beginning of the chapter. And the 6 questions were: Prakritim Purusham Chaiva Kshetra Kshetrajnameva Cha Etat Veditumichhami Jnanam Jneyam Cha Keshava. So, Jnanam. What is Jnanam? What is meant by Jnanam? The word Jnanam that is so extensively used in our scriptures. The word Jnanam has several meanings, but in the context of the 13th chapter, it means a set of values that need to be put in place that will serve as the eligibility criteria for a serious spiritual seeker. In this series of 20 values, we are reading through or studying the 18th value, which is titled Aratih Jana Samsadi. And what does it mean? It means a lack of craving for company, not reveling in company, not courting company. And this value is invariably taken along with Vivikta Desha Sevitvam. The natural love in an individual for seclusion. It's not running away from society or people, it is the natural inclination for seclusion. Not really going, not seclusion from the madding crowd, but within the setup. If he or she can achieve this sense of seclusion in the din of the battle of life, then that is Vivikta Desha Sevitvam. And at the same time, value Aratihi Janasamsadi, not courting or reveling in the company, not seeking the company of people, then we make both time and quality time and quality mind available to ourselves to delve into deeper inquiry along the lines of the Guru Shastra Upadesha. Only when a quality mind and quality time is available can such inquiry be even entered into. And therefore, Vivikta Desha Sevitvam and Aratihi Jana Samsadi are twin brothers taken together. So we were looking at these portions where Poojya Swamiji said, inquiry into subtle questions like, what is this creation? Who is God? What is the relationship between God, the creation, and me? Inquiry into such subtle questions requires special sensitivity of the mind. Sensitivity beyond what is needed to inquire into the functioning or description of tangible object or processes. Inquiry into something tangible, how to make bread, or even the grammar of a language, is aided by having changing objects to see, to watch. One can see the modifications, the vikara taking place upon things, whether in a pan of dough or upon the stems of nouns and verbs. However, when the vichara is inquiry into the self, we are dealing with something that, although fundamental, is not tangible. The self is not a tangible object that lends itself to trial and error methods. checked by gross perceptions. It cannot be verified. The knowledge of the self must be seen as a whole. To appreciate the knowledge of the self, to see the self for the non objectifiable wholeness that it is, the non objectifiable wholeness that the self is, requires a mind that is contemplative and sensitive. Which is why Vivikta Desha Sevitvam and Aratihi Jana Samsadihi, these two values become important. We will continue here from where we left in the last capsule. This is where we left off. However, Poojya Swamiji says, the sensitivity does not imply getting hurt at every turn, but it should be backed by healthy attitude and objectivity. Sensitivity doesn't talk about being touchy over here. That is not the sensitivity we are talking about. Sensitivity of mind implies, in this context, to bring the mind into a very subtle, very, uh, uh, you know, to reduce the wavelength of the mind. If I were to call these wavelengths from a scientific perspective, alpha radiation has a very long wavelength. Beta has a shorter wavelength. Gamma radiation still shorter. So, if I were to translate this understanding of radiation to states of our mind, from at the alpha level, our minds, the wavelength of our minds are pretty long. It wanders all over the place, all over the world. Then by and by we need to withdraw the mind and bring it to a beta state, and then withdraw further to a gamma state in which the wavelength of the mind is shortened, and in such a condition there is a lot of intensity. It's very penetrative. Gamma rays are always penetrative, more penetrative than beta and alpha rays, if I were to draw this analogy. So the sensitivity doesn't imply getting hurt at every turn, but it should be backed by healthy attitude and objectivity. Values come when I thoroughly understand my relationship to people, places, and things around me. In a factual understanding, those situations, attitudes, or events which I consider hurtful lose their significance for me and thereby their sting. I do not give them too much weightage. They recede into insignificance for me because something higher has taken possession, or I'm able to withdraw my wavelength and shorten it, and thereby make the mind available to me for a more useful and divine purpose. Pride and pretense, which court hurt, drop away from me. Non harmfulness and accommodation, which soften hurt, become natural for me. Because, see, I'd rather accommodate than get into a disturbed state of mind or disturbed state of affairs by way of getting into an argument, etc. Because my priorities are now different. They've shifted to much subtler levels. So I don't consider them too significant for me to even act upon, isn't it? The mind that does not get hurt is an undisturbed, non reacting, fresh, simple, and a contemplative mind that can appreciate the whole as it unfolds in the teaching of self knowledge. Because it is in the mind that the jnana vritti has to be generated, it has to be born in the mind. The precious jnana vritti. So we have to make our minds available to the Guru and the Shastras. All these values are aimed at getting the mind ready to receive this valuable teaching from the Guru, who is striving to generate the Jnana Vritti, the Aham Brahmasmi Vritti in our minds. Our Gurus are struggling, have struggled for eons with the hope that someday, sometime, this Jnanam will finally bubble up. Resorting to a quiet place, Vivikta Desha Sevitva, an absence of the need for company, Aratihi Jana Samsadi, are attitudes that establish such a contemplative mind. A mind ready for a contemplative life centered on self knowledge. This brings us to the end of this important and significant value of Aratihi Jana Samsadi, that is to be studied along with Vivikta Desha Sevitvam. We will take up the next value, namely Tattvajnanartha Darshanam, in the upcoming capsules and take our reading forward. Hari Om.